Hey, do you meet students where they are in their learning needs? Musicians need to learn music theory. We know that. But do they need to do exams? Join Sola. Hey, Sola, our UMT helper, because she has got the goods. And you can just check her out below. Question for you. Do your students need to perform? Well, tell us what you think. I'm Glory St. Germain from Ultimate Music Theory, and my very special guest today is Ultimate Music Theory certified teacher, Hetty Jagersma. Welcome, Hetty.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm so excited that you are here today.
We need our cup of coffee so we could actually just have a coffee together here.
That's right. That's how Hetty and I have coffees. We do Facebook Live. So Hetty is a professional music educator, teaching piano, preschool music class, music for young children, and ultimate music theory classes. Plus, Hetty is a wife, a mom, and busy planning her son's fall wedding, which is so exciting.
Yeah, it's really scary.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. And she joined a choir. So where do you find the time to do all that, Hetty?
Well, if you know me a little bit, you know that I like to be busy.
Yes.
So where do I find the time? I think we always make time for things that we like to do.
Yes.
So if you like to read, you're still going to find time in the middle of all of your busy days to find 20 minutes to read. Or if you like to clean your house, why at her?
Yeah, have at her. That's not my favorite thing, but no. You're right. We do. And I'm so glad that you said that, because today we're actually talking about how to teach to the student and meet them where they are. And we really have to find time to learn and to talk about this. And I love this topic, Hetty, because it's so important. And as you know, we left a SOLA link below so that you can get all the goods and keep up with where everything is at with UMT. So before we get into that though, Hetty, let's just take you back a little bit to being a student. And how did you get started with your music lessons?
Well, that was a long, long time ago. Like I said, getting a son prepared for a wedding is making me feel old, but also thinking about when did I start? When you asked me that question before, I was like, it's been a while. I was 6 years old, so it's been 46 years. So now you know how old I am. I was in grade 1, and my teacher said to my parents, she needs something better to do besides reading books all day long. Right. So I was an only child, basically. My brother was 5 years younger than me, so he would have been a baby. Yeah. Nobody to play with, living on a farm, no TV, no nothing. So she's like, she knows how to read, she knows how to do everything. Get her into something that's going to be challenging. So, yeah. So I got into piano lessons. We found a guy down the street who was able to teach, and yeah, the rest is history.
Wow. Well, I think it's incredible how we actually start our journey and how through that teaching, somehow that formulates our future as educators. You know, how do we motivate our students not only to learn, but to follow in our path? And what really started you on your musical journey and ultimately into your business, Hetty?
Well, I think probably like most teachers seem to start, somebody hears you play piano, somebody hears your proficiency, they can tell that you're, you know, somewhat accomplished, right, that you've been able to practice, that you've gotten where you are. But I didn't have any formal training at all. And then somebody asked me, let's see if you can teach my kid. Right. So I actually was a travel teacher at first. I had a full-time job as a bookkeeper, and then I would go to their place after school, or after their school time. Mm-hmm. And from there, it built into teaching more out of my house as well. But I think that I probably took about a 10-year break or so in between where I didn't teach very much. Yeah. And then I would say I've been a full-time teacher now for about 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, as the kids were growing up, and I'm lucky that my husband's an elementary school teacher, so he could be home with the kids after school and that sort of thing.
Right. And certainly you can speak the same language and understand the teacher connection. I think one of the things too that you and I are passionate about, of course, is education, as we both shared a love for teaching music for young children. I taught the program for over 20 years, and it was certainly an influence in my learning path as well as to how to, you know, continue teaching and certainly get involved in teaching young children. And therefore, you know, ultimately I developed the Ultimate Music Theory program because it just really was there, and then created the Ultimate Music Theory certification course. And of course, I was so thrilled that you completed the certification course, because it really is something that put us on our path. And I do want to say congratulations, Hetty, because not only are you a fantastic teacher, but you're a fantastic student. You know, when we talk about teaching to our students' strengths, and I really believe that it's important that we not only identify our own learning style, visual, auditory, or kinesthetic, but we also need to identify our students' learning style. I think if you really want to teach to the student, you agree that that's part of the connection, isn't it? And is understanding their learning style as well, right?
Oh, 100%. I have a new young student that I started about, I would say 6-8 weeks ago now. And his mom transferred over from another teacher. She said somehow the other teacher didn't quite understand him. He was not making progress or whatever. So I met them and I thought, oh, this is going to be a challenge. He's a busy boy. He's a total 6-year-old boy. Yeah. But he thinks he's got the brain of a 20-year-old boy. Yeah. So he thinks he can do this, but he can only maybe do this. So I'm sort of tricking him into thinking, okay, you can play Star Wars, that's fine, but we need to be doing the easy version, because he came to me with something that was like probably a grade 8 version.
Yes.
So he learned how to play Star Wars. Yeah. Just using another method book then.
Right. And I think that that's the interesting thing. And that's what makes you a great teacher, Hetty, is because you did meet the student where they wanted to learn. Yeah. And yet through your direction, you could say, perfect. I love Star Wars too. Let's learn that. We're going to do this version. It's still Star Wars, but at least you're fulfilling their desires, right? Yeah.
But in the meantime, I'm sneaking all the other stuff in. So we're having fun. Last night he climbed up here on the bench and he was full of gas, and off we went. It's good. I wish I could channel some of that energy onto me sometimes. But.
Can I just have your energy for a minute? I think it's so interesting to be able to identify the visual, auditory, or kinesthetic learner, because oftentimes, you know, my learning style, originally I thought it was kinesthetic. Like I would have bet you money on it. And then when I took my neuro-linguistic programming, like I became an NLP practitioner, I actually then learned and studied and realized, oh, I am a visual learner, which I wasn't aware of. Because you don't know until, like, how do you know? You just kind of guess, which is what I did. But then when I started to learn about how to identify learning styles for my students, and I had exactly the one that you're talking about, the little kinesthetic student that's like bouncing all over the keys and bouncing all over the bench. And I did a funny thing with one of my students. I'll share my secret with you. And Jillian, who is still my student, but now obviously advanced, but when she was little, I used to duct tape her feet to the floor. And we did it more as a joke, but it became a landmark. I would just say duct tape, and then she'd put her feet on the floor because she would swing them and do whatever. But it was just, meet the student. Like I knew that she had trouble doing that, so I just wanted to help her focus. So anyway, I want to remind you to let us know what you think, because we're just sharing ideas, Hetty and I. So remember, Solus down below, but certainly participate and tell us what you think. I know I'm trying to see all of our comments on here as well. Oh, Sarah Campbell is joining us this morning. Hey, Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Biz coach. She's amazing. One of the things that Hetty and I are talking about, that when we think about students and all the different learning styles and abilities, what do you think maybe is the one thing that you feel is important about teaching students where they are? And I actually invite our listeners to let us know what you think as well. So Hetty, what is the one thing that you think is important about teaching students where they are?
Well, sometimes I think parents come into or put their kids in lessons with the expectation that they're going to be able to play something just like that.
Right.
And so part of it is educating the parents almost, I think, before we educate kids, be able to tell them and be able to formulate in words how your teaching is going to come along. Like, rest assured, the first month or the first year, it's not going to feel like you're doing much, but we're going to get somewhere. So stick with it. It's not just 10 weeks. You can't just all of a sudden get them to play, you know, Beethoven or Bach or Star Wars.
Yeah.
So to stick with it and to put in the time, and usually it works out. I just had a phone call with a parent this week who called me, and she says, you know, my daughter doesn't have a sense of rhythm, and I'm not sure if I should put her back in lessons next year. And I don't know, you know. And I said, well, actually, I talked to her last week, and she said she's been practicing a lot with headphones on. So you can imagine this girl is always hearing her practice time in her head. She comes to lessons with me.
Right. And
what does it sound like?
Right.
So her parents aren't really totally hearing her play. They just hear that she can't just run to the piano and play whatever praise and worship song they want her to play, or whatever Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, because I'm actually teaching her how to read. Right. So I always tell them I'm trying to teach myself out of a job. I mean, work myself out of a job by teaching them how to read, and that way they can pick up any of the books that, you know, we have, and hopefully they can carry on from there.
Yeah, one of the really important things that I think you said, Hetty, and that is that you almost have to not only teach to the need of the student, but you also have to teach the parent, because sometimes, you know, we're lucky enough that the parent has also taken music lessons, and so they get it. But very often, parents put their children in music lessons because they didn't have an opportunity to learn. And so they have no concept as to how to support their child in practicing, or if they should even sit with them or listen. They just kind of say, go to the piano, well, go do your practicing, and kind of shoo. You know, I personally was blessed to have very musical parents, and my dad sat with me every single day and would tap the piano. This is before we had a metronome, to help me stay in time. So I had that, you know, he wasn't my teacher, but he was certainly my parent and my full-time coach. And, you know, I certainly passed that on to my kids. So I think you're really doing a great service to educating the parents as well. I'm just kind of looking through our little comments here, because we've got, oh, hello, Elliot. He's joining us here too. Thanks, Elliot. And Ivy Wong, all the way from Hong Kong. My goodness, she's also doing the Ultimate Music Theory certification course, and she's so dedicated. And I know she wanted to see you today.
Very fun.
It's very fun. Thanks for joining us, Ivy. One of the things, I guess, that I think musicians need to learn music theory. And because obviously, even if they say, oh, I don't study music theory. I go, well, of course you do. Otherwise you couldn't play anything. You wouldn't know what a half note is, or key signature, or time signature. So we know musicians need to learn music theory, but do they need to do exams? And I'm going to invite our audience to let us know what you think. Do musicians need to do exams? So I'm going to throw this one to you, Hetty, because young or older adult students, they just want to play for fun. So what goals can we set for them if they say, no, I don't want to do exams, or do they need to, Hetty?
Well, I personally am not a to the exam type of a teacher, but I can teach to exams. Right. And I do teach to exams a lot, just because it's not often a goal or a good expectation, something for the student to work towards. And but the thing is, sometimes it can stifle them a little bit, because I don't know, I've met some teachers that only teach, say, 3 pieces. They'll teach their, you know, list A, list B, list C, and they'll teach their study and a little bit of, oh yeah, we got to catch up on our technique, and let's do the exam. That's how I learned. I was in level 5, I think, grade 5 by the time I finally got to an actual teacher, and they said, yeah, you're really good at playing, but your technique is really not there. So we need to get you caught up, and let's do a test. Right. So I think it's a goal, and it's also a way to gauge where the students are. Okay. And it's good for parents, because parents, that's how school works. That's what they understand. That's what they get. Yeah. So when this parent called me the other night and says, well, she's taken lessons for 1.5 years. Is she progressing? In some ways, it's easier if I would have had an exam to refer to and say, look, she's got 87%.
Right.
We just need to work on this or that. So I think my goal with this student next year will be to see if I can get her through a prep exam, for example.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that, and I feel exactly the same way you do. Does every student need to do a theory formal written exam? They don't need to, but I think one of the reasons that I encourage my students to do exams, whether they go do formal, ABRSM or Royal Conservatory of Music, or the state exams, whether they're in Texas or Washington State, wherever, doing state exams, I encourage them to do exams, even if they're doing the Ultimate Music Theory practice exams, for a few reasons. One, because you're right, it shows the assessment of knowledge as to what have you retained, and wow, look how great I did, and a goal work towards. And two, because you can show that to parents and say, well, here you go, this is where they're at. And actually, one of the reasons that in the Ultimate Music Theory books, and I know you're familiar with them because you've taken the course, but one of the things that I was really adamant about was showing progress. And as the students are going through the Ultimate Music Theory program, at the end of every lesson is an accumulative review test. So if you're on lesson 5, the review test is about everything from lesson 1 all the way to lesson 5 and then to lesson 6. So it's constantly reviewing. And then what we did do, you probably can't see it, but at the beginning on the front cover, we actually did a little report card. So as students are going through the program, their parents can see, oh, they got, 98, 97, 96. So it's continuous, continuously showing you how well you did and how you're progressing. Because I think just because a student wants to take music lessons doesn't mean that they need to do an exam, but I think it's important that we are able to assess where we at,
right,
as in anything that we do, right? So now
I didn't clue in before on that.
Sorry, pardon me.
Sorry, I thought you were done. I didn't clue in before about the report card on the front. That's a good tip.
Oh, Hetty, yeah. It's a little report card. I must share with you that one of the things I love about, talking to you, because I always get ideas from everybody that I talk to. I like to listen and I like to learn. And that idea actually came from one of the Ultimate Music Theory certified teachers. And when Sheila McKibben-Uren, who is, was my editor on this series and co-author on our other books, and one of the teachers said, it would be great. Like, I love how you have the review tests, but it would be nice if you put it in right on the table of contents, because it's like a little report card. And I said, what a brilliant idea. So when we did the rewrite on it, this is a few years back, of course, we actually incorporated that. And my students love it too, because they get to see their report card. So it's kind of fun. So we've been talking about, teaching to the student needs. So here's a great question for you, Hetty. Do students need to perform? So I love to play the piano, but I get really nervous if someone is looking at my fingers. So do I have to perform? Do I need to perform? What are your thoughts?
Well, you and I are both familiar with the Music for Young Children program.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have, 3, 4, 5 little bodies on the floor in our rooms, and they're used to playing together with each other. Right. And they're used to playing on their own keyboards as soloists. So I think, and with other people in the room. So I think it's great. It's a great little experience for them to start with their so-called performance time. I grew up, like I said, with, my first teacher was an insurance agent who dabbled in a little piano teaching. And then the next one was a high school student who, whatever, because my parents didn't know. They didn't realize that you needed proficient teachers. Yeah. But in spite of, so I never really had a chance to perform. But in spite of it all, I'm still here. We're still doing it. And I actually just recently started playing in our church as pre-service songs and that sort of thing. But so is it important to perform? Not everybody's going to be a performer. Like to me, piano, what I love about piano is the teaching aspect. I think that's the big thing. But I can perform and I will perform, and I have accompanied a lot and that sort of thing. So I think it's good for children, students, adults, everybody to experience performance. Yeah. I had a teen student on my bench last night. He only has taken lessons since January. Yeah. He said, do I have to? But I said, let's give it a shot. You just played with your big band They went on a band tour to Ontario, all the way from BC, so it was quite an adventure. You're a soloist in your band. Let's try it, Pick a song that you think sounds, because he's like, oh, I'm just a beginner. Everybody wants to sound like they're professional. But we're all beginners somewhere.
I think one of the support things too, when I have young students in there and they're nervous about performing, then I often do duets with them, because there is such that safety, because if you hear a wrong note, you can just go, wasn't me, you can blame Sola, because does everyone have to perform? Perhaps not everyone. I know I have some adult students and they truly just want to play. I had one student, she was 74 and she was starting music lessons, and her whole goal was simply to play New York, New York. Like, that was the ultimate goal. That's why she took piano lessons. She got one of those big note music books with the notes written in the note name, which is totally like off my allowing. But at 74, she said, look, I just want to play New York, New York. So, she would not perform because she wasn't comfortable. So in that instance, she just wanted to play for her personal, in her little condo, for herself. But as you said, when we have, I think, young students, it's a confidence builder, because for them, their future is about getting up and presenting in front of a classroom, perhaps speaking, perhaps leading a group at school if they're working either in band or on a science project. So I think by starting off maybe with doing duets and then going on and letting them fly on their own, we're kind of giving them wings, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, there's so much more to music lessons than just the music lesson.
Yes. Yeah. I think as teachers, what are we going to do now with those non-practicing students? Like, what techniques can you use, Hetty?
Well, I don't know if you can see behind me or not, but there's a big stack of books right over there.
Yes.
So if they come to lesson without a book, I've always got something to pull from. Mm-hmm. As long as they have their bag, we practice right at lesson. I don't get too excited about it.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing too, is that sometimes, I talk a lot about, communication, and sometimes if we have that student, that non-practicing student, maybe it's because they've had circumstances that happen at school or at home, and they don't feel comfortable even talking about it. So they just take that pain point of, I don't know, I didn't get to practice. So I think being a sympathetic ear, because we don't always get to do everything that we have on our to-do list as best as we try. So I think that's a great idea. When I have students who don't come in, we also just say, or don't bring their books or couldn't have a chance to practice, I usually just say, you know what, we're just going to sight read today. So we're going to go ahead and do something. What do you do with an adult beginner who says, I don't want to play out of a baby book? Now what happens? Hetty? Oh, I think she's having computer problems. Well, my computer died. Okay, then. I guess it's just me. Well, if Hetty comes back, we'll share. If not, I'll just go ahead and share my ideas. So if you have, my question was, if you are an adult beginner and you don't want a baby book, where are you going to start? So my thoughts would be that make sure that you have those tools. Hetty talked about having those tools behind her so that she could provide her students with, oh, she's back.
Sorry.
Yay. Oh, there she is.
My computer was plugged in, but the power bar wasn't turned on.
Oh, that's okay. I was just complimenting you. I'll review my question, and then I was the question was, where do we start with an adult beginner who says, I don't want to have a baby book? I always think that's a bit of a challenge. They want to play things with two hands, just, something immediately. So what is your suggestion when you have an adult maybe giving them something to learn by rote, or how do you even, because I know you teach a lot of young children, do you take adult students, and how do you guide them through that?
Yeah, I do have adult students. I've got one actually that I'm teaching via FaceTime still. Nice. that I had from previous province where we lived. And I have another one that just started this year. She also transferred from another teacher who she said she felt she wasn't really progressing from. Mm-hmm. So I haven't had too many beginner adult students. So, but when I do have adult students, I try to give them a scale right away. So we're playing a scale with chords, teach them how to do, our 1 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord. Yes. And all of a sudden they feel like they're playing something big.
Yes.
And that's in their practice time. And then the same as little kids, you sneak in all the goodies, right? The theory and the basics.
Yeah. One of the things, and I've had, many adult beginner students, and they want to learn music as well. And one of the things that when we were writing the series is that I wanted to make sure that adults had a good starting point too. So when your adults are starting, you can definitely start them in the Prep 1, Ultimate Music Theory, Prep 1 Rudiments Workbook, Prep 2, or the Basic Beginner Book, the Yellow Book, because this is really the perfect place for them to learn, as you said, their 1, 4, and 5 chords. There's no cartoon characters in them. Yeah. They're just simply engaging books with that cumulative step-by-step for learning theory. And I think it would be, really effective for your adults. And I do want to mention to our listeners, or ask them actually, if you have any questions or friends who would benefit from this information, please let us know about them. Please share, because we're all about connecting with other teachers.
The complete book is also great for adults, I find too, because they've got it all in one, and they're not looking at this, oh man, I need to do 5 volumes before I can ever know anything.
Yes.
Syndrome that they get.
Yeah, absolutely. And the all-in-one Complete Rudiments Workbook is to design for that, because an adult student can absorb more information. They can go a little bit quicker. Yeah. So it is a good, it is a good resource for them. One of the things you and I talked about earlier was really connecting with other teachers. And what do you see as that one thing missing from today's teaching techniques that help students really, that help teachers help their students?
Well, I think when you're starting out as a teacher, find some people in your area that you respect, people that you appreciate how they teach. That's how I really got to know you guys all through MYC back in Manitoba days. Used to make that trek out to the breakfast place once a month, and we talk shop, and it was great. It's great. It's a great way to learn and to move forward. And that's where I also learned that, it's not just a matter of somebody, sticking your student on the bench and make him play his scales, make him play his parts, and then he's done. We learned how to make games. We learned how to do fun ways of doing ear training and sight reading and that sort of thing. So I think mentoring with other teachers, and find somebody that you can gel with, that you can mesh with, and you can work together, and hopefully, borrow, steal, share ideas with them.
Absolutely. You really put a smile on my face, because I completely forgot about our little teacher breakfast meetings.
Oh, those are good memories from Manitoba.
They are such good memories. Yeah. And I think it's so important, because oftentimes when you go to, I'm glad you mentioned that, Hetty. I think oftentimes when you go to a conference or you go to a webinar, you're just 100% focused, you're taking notes, and you're just writing things down, and you walk out of there and you've learned something, which is great. But sometimes you just want to talk, and you just want to connect. And I think we kind of had 3 tips here. My question was 3 success tips that you'd like to share. And I think that was your number 1 tip, was network with other teachers, find out, where they are, and maybe even start a group of your own, call it the coffee place, and whether you meet once a week or once a month. I think it's really inspiring to get to know other teachers, and maybe there's got to be a teacher close by, right?
Yeah. Although, we just moved here almost 2 years ago, I guess now. Yeah. And it's difficult. It's difficult when we're in a lower mainland Vancouver area. So there's a big population, and it's difficult to find people that you kind of can work with.
Right. Well,
so I think as teachers, it's important. We're all friends.
yes.
Like we're not competition to each other. We all have different strengths that we're going to be able to give to our kids in our community. I'm not going to be the teacher you want to send your student to if you want to learn, jazz, for example. I mean, I can do it, but I'm not the professional jazz player. So perhaps I can send you to the person down the street.
Exactly.
Who can teach that way, or just teach by rote, or that sort of thing. I mean, I do teach by rote alongside everything else. So
one of the things that you mentioned too is that if you do live in an isolated area, perhaps being part of, and I know it was one of your tips to share, was to join communities online, because just as you and I are sharing here, we're not in the same city, we're not even in the same province, but we can still connect, we can still join. I do invite our listeners to join the Ultimate Music Theory Facebook group, because teachers such as Hetty, Ultimate Music Theory certified teachers, are on there. Feel free to ask them questions, reach out, communicate with them. You never know, they might move to your city pretty soon. So it's important to connect and reach out, and there's no such thing as a silly question. Otherwise I'd be labeled as silly Glory, because I ask a lot of questions. I know you had a great tip as well, and that was something about scheduling. What is that success tip?
Yeah, I'm going through that right now, because we, as you know, with MYC, we need to have our early bird registrations in by the middle of May. Right. So I always tell my parents, okay, I need this by May 1st, because that gives them a little bit of leeway to get the books and orders and whatever organized. Right. But stick with your schedule. Set your schedule. Okay, I want to teach Monday to Thursday, and I want to teach. I don't mind teaching from 3 till 7, say. Right. That's my preference. But some people only want to teach Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They want to have, or Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. They want to have the rest of the week for other things. They don't want to teach full time. Yes. Set your schedule. Make your schedule work for you. For example, the other day somebody messaged me, and I typically don't do makeup lessons, and he said, "Can I switch my son's lesson today?" Normally, I would have been accommodating if I could have. But there was no other time. And I said, and you know what happened? They came to their lesson at their regular time. They didn't really need to switch. So sometimes we have actually a lot of comments. I'm going to try to pop them up here, Hetty. So they may be questions for you. Okay, I do have some questions. Sarah Campbell, you'll see me looking at the other screen here. Sarah Campbell says, just the simple act of announcing their name and a piece is a big deal to students. I'll just pop that up on the screen so we can all see it. Hopefully I've got it there. Sarah Campbell said, just the simple act of announcing the name, age, and the piece is a big deal to students. And I agree, right? That's something that they can definitely assert to when they're coming in there. Marianne shares with us that, I'm just popping up a few comments here. Marianne says, I have parents complete a goal form at the beginning of the school year. They check what they expect from lessons, and they can also select the events, testing, Christmas recitals, theory day, spring recital, and so on. What a great idea, Marianne. Yeah, I have a form like that too that I hand out to my parents. Oh, I really like that. Okay, Marianne, I might copy that. I do have a form that I send out that's really more information than asking questions about, would you like to participate in festival? Would you like to do theory exams? Would you like to do piano exams? Those kind of things. So good point, Marianne. Sarah Campbell said, ooh, that's something I didn't think about. So not an exam teacher. Anita says, hi, that's awesome. Well, one of the things that I love to share about too is one of the other tips that you came up with, and that's keeping up with what's out there, and when it comes to other opportunities such as methods. How do you feel about that, and how can we not get swallowed up by all of the latest and greatest? Well, I just moved one province over, and I've got a room full of stuff over there. Yeah. Well, it's a bit of an exaggeration. It looks worse than it is because it's kind of spread around. Right. But I've got a number of things that I moved over here, and I'm like, am I ever going to use this again? It's something that grabbed me when I was at conference and I didn't use it right away. You know, you always talk about speed of implementation. Right. If you don't use it right away in your lessons and you can't think of a way to incorporate it right away, it may have looked great when the person presented it, but it's not your thing.
Right.
I've got a couple of methods too that I picked up this way, and I think, oh man, it would be really cool to. Do I have time for it all? No.
Right.
I think you have to work with your strengths, because you can get sucked into all the shiny bits.
Yeah.
Not only is it expensive, it just takes space in your brain, and you can't really do it all.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes we do. I know I get like that too, even if I'm an obviously business owner and I'll see someone else's website and I'll go, oh my God, that's so good. Or, oh, that's so good. And, oh, this is this. And I think, one of the things that I actually learned from, I always have coaches. I have 3 coaches in different areas of my business. And I highly recommend that if you're a business owner, you need to have a business coach. Just like if you think about the greats in sports, Tiger Woods, does he have a coach? Yes. Really? Why? He's already fantastic. Great. It's important that we get those coaches. But the story I wanted to share with you was one of my coaches many years ago, and I was too, as you said, Hetty, new shiny object. And she said to me one day, she said, Glory, when you have a student and that student comes in and says, oh, well, my friend's piano teacher does this, and my other band teacher said this and this and this and this, she said, what do you say to them? You say, well, I'm your teacher and this is the way I teach, the minuet, or this is the way I teach, this Christmas, or whatever the music is. And I really had that aha moment that, find what works for you and stick to it. And when you have a coach, you have to put all your faith in that coach, that they have your best interest, whether you're teaching or whether you're a coach, whatever it might be, that's the one go-to. So, you need to look at shiny objects because you need to grow, but you just don't need to, squirrel, as they say, sort of spread yourself too thin. So now I've, as I said, I have 3 coaches that I work with in different areas of my business, and that's it. I don't look for any more shiny objects. I have faith in them that they're there, just as my students have faith in me. I'm your teacher, and these are the books that I'm recommending, and, let's go with it. And one of the things that, speaking of bonuses, I do want to share that I do have an amazing bonus for teachers to attend my free professional development webinar. It's the Learn the 3 Master Keys that you need to teach music theory more effectively. It's going to be a full workshop that you don't want to miss. You're going to discover how to teach theory in a really fun and effective way. Hetty and I have been talking about how to have fun with your students. I'm going to share 3 of my best mnemonic devices, but shh, Sola, shh, it's a secret. I'm not telling you now. You have to attend the webinar. You're going to learn about mnemonics and what they are and why you need them to teach faster. So make sure that you get registered. That's happening May 8th and May 9th. It's going to be powerful. And if you have any friends who you think would benefit from the information, please let them know about us. And you can click the little Sola link below for registration details. Now, as I mentioned, Miss Hetty has successfully completed the Ultimate Music Theory Certification course. And Hetty, that was a few years ago.
I was thinking that was like 100 years ago. Wasn't it?
100 years ago.
I think I was one of your first classes, like it was in person.
Yes. Back then I did the first certification course in Manitoba, and it was all MYC teachers, as a matter of fact. And I think the first one we did had 27 teachers in the first certification course live, which is amazing. And then I went on to Calgary and Edmonton. And since then we've traveled, all over North America from coast to coast. We've been in, Florida, California, you name it. We've been there, Washington State, out east, out west. But I really, really enjoyed the live event. And now we actually offer it as an online course because, as I mentioned, Ivy's here from Hong Kong. We have a lot of people that were attending the webinar that I did yesterday that were from the UK, Australia, all over North America, South Africa. So it's important now, and even for yourself, you're doing online teaching too, that you can now take these online courses so that you don't have the travel expense and hotel expense. And then, you got to find a babysitter, and there's so many more things into it. But one of the things that I asked Hetty about was in the certification course, what was maybe 3 of your biggest takeaways if you could share those with us?
Well, I think I mentioned the speed of implementation. Right away, get the books and go home and use them.
Yes.
Do the homework yourself. Run through the book yourself so you know all the little minute details that'll come up.
Yes.
Because it's important to use it right away. And yes. I think finding something that works for you, like ultimate music theory, really works for me because I really like how the exams are at the end, and it's like what's that called? The leveled learning or whatever, like spiral
learning. Yep.
Yeah. Cumulative learning. The repetition is there so students don't forget, oh, what did we learn about dominant sevenths way back in chapter 2?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really good. Another thing is don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question, like you said before.
Yes.
We're all still learning, and all of a sudden you get these bingo aha moments. One student yesterday that I was teaching online, and she's working towards her basic level 5 exam.
Yes.
And she all of a sudden said, I all of a sudden realized why the dominant seventh is called the dominant. She's known how to write these things all along, but all of a sudden it clued in. It's note number 5, dominant.
Yes.
So don't be afraid to ask questions, and that's what I always encourage my students to. I'm not going to make fun of them or whatever. Right. It's fine to ask questions, and I don't
unless it's really silly, then you have to make fun of them.
Well, we make jokes. Yeah, I mean, you can probably figure out that I'm not exactly the most serious teacher on the bench here. But yeah, and if people are mocking you for asking a question, well, then maybe you're in the wrong circle of
exactly
people or whatever. But I don't think the UMT group is quite like that.
Yes, absolutely.
And I like to also apply the theory concepts to the play. Right. So make it real. Because when I did my grade 5, like I said, 100 years ago, then we all of a sudden had to catch up on technique. We all of a sudden had to catch up on theory. We all of a sudden had to do all this stuff. So I was probably kind of learning it along the way, but not really. Yeah. So I try to incorporate, all of a sudden they're doing ear training and sight reading and everything else.
Right.
Into the lesson.
And one of the things too that we did do, and I'm so much about learning the theory not only in the written way, which is important because we retain 30 to 40% more information when we actually write things down, regardless of to your learning style. So that is important to use written books rather than just say, well, I learn it while I'm playing. But when you're using the Ultimate Music Theory workbooks, there's analysis questions at the end of every review test. And those are for sight reading. Like I use my workbooks with my students where they do the written work, but then we take it up to the piano and we actually play the exercises. As you said, play the dominant 7th chord, play the analysis piece. And they're specifically written for the grade level that they're at. So these are not analysis on, Tchaikovsky's something or other, where you're analyzing and finding the chords in the piece, but you could never play it. Sheila and I actually wrote the pieces that are in the analysis specifically so that you could see those concepts and then play them for your sight reading activities. So it's more than just writing theory, but as you said, doing, your ear training and sight reading.
It makes it practical. And that's the big thing for me. I something that's abstract for a lot of students, it doesn't. And again, you have to educate the parents because, for example, yesterday a student came in with their purple prep book, and she says, "I'm all done. You can finish marking it." And my mom says, "Don't get me another book because I'm not coming back to piano in September. I'm going to do guitar, so I don't need any more theory." So I didn't get a chance to talk to her mom last night, but now that we're talking here, I'm thinking, it's interesting how people think, "Oh, we worked through the book. We're done. We can close the book," and it's check. But that's not, they don't realize how it's actually applicable to what they're learning. Whether, guitar, it's got chords.
Yes.
And dominant sevenths, and they just don't realize it.
They don't. It's funny you mentioned that. I was sharing the other day that I had a student that came to me, adult student, and she is a professional singer. And her name is Leanne Goose, very very talented, multi-talented singer. And so she came to me and she said, I need to learn music theory. And I said, oh, well, okay, you know, do you play an instrument? Or she said, no, I'm a singer. And I said, great. And I said, so why are you interested in learning music theory? She said, well, every time I go into rehearsal and the guys say to me, you know, what key do you sing this in? I just always say G. And I, you know, I couldn't help but laugh. And I said, oh, well, that's interesting. And she said, I know, they laugh too, because they say, well, Leanne, you can't sing everything in the key of G, because what if this is your range and the highest notes over here, but you don't get that high? So anyway, she started learning music theory, and I actually put her into the basic rudiments. No, pardon me. She did do prep 1 and prep 2, because I was just writing prep 2 at the time. And it was actually because of Leanne that I changed the format of some of my writing, because as an adult learner, she asked more questions than young students do. And in one of the, right. And in one of the questions I was writing, I think it was the prep 2 book, and she was doing the review test, and I had a bunch of terms in there, and she said, well, how would I know that? And I said, oh, because the table of contents is at the back of the book. And she said, well, how would I know that? You didn't teach that to me. And I just had that aha moment as an author going, you're right, I didn't. So I changed all the lessons to incorporate, as you know, because you teach UMT, I incorporated all the lessons so they have a little bit of, you know, maybe just learning dynamics in lesson 1 and just learning tempo in lesson 2. And then of course, accumulatively going through the program. But the reason that originally I wrote it like that was because all the other books were like that. Table of contents is at the back of the book. They never taught it. You just had to memorize the list, and that was it. So it was really, you know, students actually help us teach better because we learn, you know, and especially those adults, because they ask all those different questions, right? So,
well, and don't just assume that they know it, because like I said with my little student the other day, she's like, I just clued in. Dominant 7th is built on note number 5. It's like,
yeah. And they have the aha moment. Well, I want to say thank you so much, Hetty, for sharing all of your tips and tricks, and jumping out of bed early. Come and join me this morning. I'm like, Hetty, we're on in 8 minutes. What?
West Coast time difference.
I know the time difference is crazy. And even as I'm lining up the webinars for the people out in Australia, you know, I'm doing webinars at, you know, 9 o'clock at night, because for them, that's 12 noon. Right. And so we've got a lot of little time changes. So sorry about that, but I'm glad.
No worries. We worked.
It all worked. If you'd like to learn more about the Ultimate Music Theory Certification course, I just want to invite you to make sure that you get registered for the professional development webinar coming up, the 3 master keys you need to teach music theory. And I'll be sharing all of these ideas with you. Don't forget to join our little SOLA and make sure that you're implementing in your studio what you are learning about today. And speaking of moving forward, Hetty, what are you doing in your studio next? What's coming up next for you?
Well, we've got next week, May 4th, I've got a concert that I'm actually singing at. It's called, We've Got Your Bach. We've Got Your Back. And,
that's so cute.
Yeah, the conductor that we've got there is amazing. I went back to choir starting in January, just so I could learn how to conduct.
Yes.
And I've been in a choir, and I've been the accompanist many times, but I've never really, and I've observed conductors, but I've never really been the conductor. So I was approached and asked if I could start a choir, possibly in the future, and I'm always willing to learn.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I've also learned the most powerful word in the English language is no, so I might just not do it, but we'll see. But so anyway, in the meantime, I'm learning lots of Bach, and we're doing lots of singing, which is not totally, I mean, I can sing, I'm a proficient singer, but my voice is not always the best. I probably need a little Sarah training, I think.
Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, can you come to Abbotsford and help me? But so yeah, that's fun. And what I've done is I've included this as a lesson for all my students. So their students and their families are going to be coming to this concert. Yeah. So they're going to be hearing the harpsichord, they'll be hearing the organ, they'll be hearing the orchestra, probably some of the older Burl type instruments, which is kind of cool. So I've been working on that in my studio in the last couple of weeks. We've been doing group classes this week and learning all about Bach.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And I think it's fantastic that you are really giving students that wide spectrum, because, Bach, Beethoven, and the boys, as I call them, it's really fun to do jazz, improv. It's fun to learn chord structures. It's fun to learn a little bit of everything, because you never know where your path will lead you, right? So I think even in teaching young children, how do you know that one student that you're teaching isn't going to be the conductor for the Philharmonic Orchestra? Like, how do you know? You don't know. So by giving them and exposing them to all these opportunities of learning different music styles and genres, you're really doing them a great service. So,
well, it's not something that the parents probably would have bought tickets for, because it's a 7:30 concert on a Saturday night, and they're like, should we go? And I said, well, it's an hour and a half out of your life, and it's an experience, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's going to be very successful. I hope you take lots of pictures and share them with us.
Yeah, I'll be sharing them on Facebook. So.
Okay, perfect. We're going to check that out. Again, I want to say thank you so much to Hetty for sharing her awesome tips and insights on how to teach to the student. I want to say congratulations, Hetty, of course, on all your success, and good luck with your performance. And of course, planning your son's wedding. So we'll see pictures of that too. So on behalf of Hetty and myself, Lori St. Germain, and SOLA, don't forget to check out our SOLA bot below and get signed up for the webinar. It's coming up in May, and we'll see you on the inside. Right, Hetty?
Bye.
Okay, see you. Thanks for joining us this morning. Bye now.